Welcome to Broadway Drumming 101. My guest today is Derek Stoltenberg. How are you today?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm wonderful. I'm glad you can be a part of the podcast. I found out about you, I think, through Instagram, and I was scrolling through, and for some reason, some of your posts came up, and I was like, man, this guy has a really great feel. And that's one thing that really attracts me to certain drummers is the way that people play. And it's clearly why you were hired for the things that you've been hired for. And I'm glad you can be a part of the podcast to share some of your experiences with me.
I appreciate that. I was wondering actually how you got my name, or if someone had passed my name along, or what. I never know how these things kind of happen sometimes anymore. So,
but first, I have a question for you.
Sure.
Primantis. Do you like primantis?
Oh, yeah.
Since you're from Pittsburgh, tell me if you like those sandwiches.
I do love them, and you got to get you got to pronounce it right. It's primantis. Because it's part of, if you're like a real Yinzer from back in the day, it would be like, go get a Primanti sandwich. Like sandwich is
really
how you will see it spelled sometimes in like old ads for it, or like Yinzers making T-shirts and stuff. If you're like walking down the strip in Pittsburgh, but yeah, Primantis. That's the way.
Primantis.
Yeah. So, but Primantis it makes it sound a little more distinguished than it actually is. No, I love it. That's like one of my comfort foods whenever I go back home. I don't go there all the time anymore. Just when I go home, it's kind of like I just get in, I see some people, do a couple things, hang out with friends, and sometimes it's like, let's go to Primanti's, because it's also like pretty cheap to drink there. It's good if you like want to go to get together to watch like football or hockey, baseball. They always do like specials for, the local sports teams and whatnot. And it was great. Like there was actually, when I used to play a bunch of high school musicals, when I first moved back to Pittsburgh from after grad school, where there was a bunch of my friends, we were all playing different like high school shows in the area. And there was like a Primanti's that was kind of central to everything. So we'd all just kind of meet there at the end of our shows, and they're high school shows, so they would end a lot sooner. And we could just meet up there and like have a nightcap, a night sandwich, if you will, and then head back home. And it's great. It's comforting.
Your top 5 of all time. Curious as to what your influences were or are.
Yeah. Oh man, of all time, or like influences getting me into drums?
Influences getting you into drums.
Okay. Ooh, man. That's so tough. Josh Freese is probably one of my like all-time favorites. And just a lot of like his playing, his feel to me has always been just like, he's just kind of like a hardcore, like blue collar drummer to me, even though he has like this like Walt Disney, Los Angeles upbringing. There's just something about the way he plays. Like he kind of plays the same with everyone he plays with, but it's different to whatever that style is. And it's always like exactly what that style needs, or whatever that artist he's playing with. If it's like Sting, I got into him through the Vandals, because like that pop punk kind of era of music was big for me. So like the Vandals and Blink-182, Green Day, was a little bit into like Rancid and Mighty Mighty Boss Tones, bands like that. Yeah, Josh Freese was one of those guys who I loved. And then I got into him through like A Perfect Circle and Devo. Now he's with Foo Fighters, which I was really happy to see. I was bummed to see Taylor Hawkins die, because he was also a big influence on me, but I was like right away, Josh Freese is the guy that's got to go in and replace him. But yeah, so Josh Freese, I would say like Travis Barker is definitely a big one from Blink-182. For like a punk rock drummer, I feel like he kind of changed how pop punk drummers started playing after that. And obviously he drew a lot of influence from like Trey Cool from Green Day and all that stuff too. But he was like one of those first guys that was not just playing fast, he was like playing parts too. Like he was kind of orchestrating around a 4-piece punk rock drum set a little differently. So that was big for me. And then probably the next few guys, they're all like rock drummers, really. I didn't get into like jazz until a little later, but Chad Sexton from 311, that was like a big band for me. It's always been like one of my biggest bands in my life. Jose Pasillas from Incubus, That was a big one. And then, oh man, at number 5, maybe like a Taylor Hawkins or a Chad Smith, like Foo Fighters or Chili Peppers, like that kind of. Those guys, I feel like all really shaped what kind of got me into playing drums when I was like really trying to start to play drum set a little bit more, or just what my like middle school fantasies were like. It was like me playing drums with one of those bands, still is sometimes too, but getting to play with one of those bands and play like that. And I think a lot of my like even my mannerisms when I'm playing physically are kind of based off of like what I saw some of those guys do back in the day.
If Josh Freese wasn't around and Dave Grohl was like, you know what, I saw Derek on Instagram. I want you to audition for Foo Fighters. But then you get a call from a contractor saying, you know what, I got this new musical coming into Broadway. I want you to play the musical. Dave Grohl says, you know what, you sound great. I want you to join the Foo Fighters.
Oh, it'd be Foo Fighters. No question. Like I'll help the contractor find another drummer if they want, but it's Foo Fighters all day for sure. That'll always be like dream number one is like play with one of those bands or, I would love to be in a group like that. Obviously, that's such a hard thing to do, and to be in a band or, with an artist that gets to get to that level. But that'll always be like, I would take that in a heartbeat for sure. Even if it's an artist I don't really care for, if they were like, we would love to have you play for a couple of years touring with us, I'd be like, all right, let's do it.
All right. What if the situation was, Carter McLean is leaving The Lion King and he wants you to take over, but a band that has a new record out that you really, really love, like what's the name of the band? Starts with P. Jesse Ray loves them a lot. He wants to be the drummer.
Paramore. He's a big Paramore.
Yes, Paramore. Paramore says, you know what, I want you to go on this 6-month tour. 6-month tour with Paramore or The Lion King for the next 15 years.
Oh man. See, that's tough because like you never know. Like a 6-month tour, who knows what happens with the band after that. It depends, because a band like Paramore has they came in as like this hot flash in the pan at first, and that's kind of what I think a lot of people thought they might be, but they've maintained a little longevity now, and they're like my age actually. I want to say they're all like mid-30s, and so I feel like I might still do that, because I feel like a show like Lion King, which obviously it's like that's a great gig, of course, to be on something that long running. I feel like you'll still want to do other things, and that show will still be around, or a show like that. There'll always be shows that are around. And I like to think that if I had that decision to make, that whoever asked me to do it would still keep me in mind for something down the road, But going out on tour with like a band like that, if I'm playing like Madison Square Garden or other arenas for 6 months, that's like, I feel like that's a once in a lifetime experience, unless you're in one of those bands that gets to do it all the time. But even then, that's far between. Like to get to do that, that'd be great. I just saw like a bunch of shows at MSG this summer too, so I think my mind is like really in that mode right now. That's what is still like really important to me, is going to shows like that. I feel like I talk to a lot of people in this industry, like in musical theater or in like the cabaret world and stuff, and it's like, hey, when's the like, oh, I'm going to see Phoenix and Beck at Madison Square Garden, and they're like, oh yeah, I can go see shows at Madison Square Garden or go to Pier 17. It's like, we're in the city where every band tours through here, at least twice a year for most of them, and if not, once a year or something. But like, you're so close to so many great artists coming through, and I feel like a lot of people forget to, like, especially people who get into this and are musicians, sometimes you lose sight of, like, obviously life things come up, but so many people I feel like haven't been to a concert in a long time when I talk to them. And that was like such a huge part of my just kind of upbringing, and like my high school and college summers was like going to amphitheater shows and like just getting that that feel of just like, waiting outside in the parking lot with your friends and then lining up and trying to run in, get a good spot, or sit on the lawn with some friends. Like that stuff to me is just, that's like Primanti sandwiches. It's like, it just kind of, it makes it all complete to me, So this summer has been great because I got off the road with Mean Girls and came home and was just like, oh man, there's all these bands coming through. I am not like pressed for money right now, luckily for a few months. And at the time, now I'm kind of like, all right, I spent a lot of money at concerts, but yeah, it's just nice to like go see concerts and kind of, and just other shows, not like concerts per se, but like just to get re-inspired and, keep a continuous line of like motivation and almost like a fantasy kind of thing, like a daydream kind of thing. Because I feel like if you lose sight of that, sometimes you start to get a little more jaded, or it makes it harder to like enjoy some of the stuff that you do. But yeah, that's my long tangent about concerts.
And it's unfortunate that a lot of the young people that it seems like they want to get into theater don't even know who A Perfect Circle is. Not that you have to know that, because you're not going to have a Perfect Circle musical, even though that would probably be cool.
Great. I love that.
Or Tool.
Weird. It'd be so weird, man. It'd be great.
What's his name? James Maynard?
Maynard James Keenan, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, man. He'd be.
I actually, weirdly enough, I have like a WhatsApp group of all my best friends from like high school. Like I'm still really close with a large group of people from where I grew up and everything. And Maynard has been like a weird GIF or like a meme that we'll send for things, or like I don't know. It's like it's hard to explain the context of it, but every now and then like a Maynard GIF will pop up in response to someone that's having a bad day and they're venting. It's always like a GIF of Maynard, so it's like kind of like an angsty kind of, yeah, just him arching, doing a weird thing.
I got to tell you, in 1995, 1996, when Enema came out with Tool, fellow drummers like, my God, you got to check out this band Tool. I'm like, okay, let me check them out. I grew up, just really briefly, I grew up in, was born in 1966. And I grew up in 70s soul and funk and disco. And then I got into rap music in 1979. 1979 is like the 1962 or 64 of the Beatles when they were on the Ed Sullivan Show. When Rappers Delight came out, everything changed. But I got into hip hop, but I also got into rock through my cousin. He introduced me to Rush and the Police and Iron Maiden. And our first rock concert I went to was Judas Priest and Iron Maiden. So I got it in.
Was that the tour with Dio opening for them? Or this was in the 90s, you're saying, right?
No, this is in the 80s, like 82, 81.
Yeah.
And Eddie came out with the big monster guy, and Rob Halford came out on his motorcycle, and I got really into metal, and I was into a metal band in the 80s and 90s. And I got into, and I was always into, Bad Brains and stuff. But when I was introduced to Tool, I just find that band, especially with the odd meter stuff, and I know that we're not even talking about Broadway yet, but this is
I love this stuff.
It's more interesting to me because I think that people's influences it impacts the way that they play shows. But these guys are on a whole other level, and that's kind of what got me into A Perfect Circle, because the lead singer was singing for them, and going back to Josh Freese, his that playing on that song Judith. Man.
I love that. There's a video of them doing that on Conan from like whenever it came out, so like 2000, 2001. And that was kind of like when I first discovered Josh Freese, because I was like in that like the Vandals phase and had started listening to A Perfect Circle because I had heard Josh Freese also played with them. And I wasn't even into Tool yet. I knew about Schism, like Lateralis and whatnot. And I remember that video would come on in the morning. I used to have my TV. It had like the wake up, the alarm timer on it. So the TV would turn on. And I had it set to MTV because they would show all like the kind of weirder music videos in the morning. And I remember it would, well, I guess it's not weird because it would also be like John Legend, like Ordinary People came out. And then right after that would be Schism by Tool. And it was like this weird music video with these like claymation guys. And I would be waking up and like, so I'm like kind of in a daze, like half awake. And I just would wake up to that. And I hated it at first because I thought I was having like a nightmare because it was just like all this weird shit going on. And then someone was like, oh man, yeah, there's this new super band called A Perfect Circle. And it's like Josh Freese and the guitarist from Smashing Pumpkins, James Aya, and like the bass player from Marilyn Manson, I think, like Twiggy or Pat. I think Paz, who was in Smashing Pumpkins, was in it at first, and there's a whole lineup change. But like, I got into that because that was kind of like, it was like Tool light, you know, it wasn't so all over the place and in your face about it. It was just like, it had like a kind of goth alternative rock kind of vibe to it. And I love Josh Freese. So I was like, well, this is the stuff. This is great right here. And I got super into that. And then they did a run of like promoting that album. So they were on like Conan and like, I think they were on Leno, and they did, what was that song? I remember it was like track 6. It was like whatever the like 3 Libras, I think. It was like that kind of
I love that song. The slow one, right?
Yeah. And he plays on that, and he plays in a way, there's like a fill that he does going into the second verse where he just like, it was just like, I don't know how to describe it without like sounding goofy and singing it, but he hits the ride bell at this weird time and then just does one of those little sweeps like, and just like the way it was just like a thing I hadn't heard before in a song that was so much more of like a down tempo kind of vibe. And then like the whole outro of the song too, it's like still maintaining this lush sound, but he's going off on it, but in a way that is so, like I said, like, it's just, to me, it's like perfect. It's like exactly what the song still needed, but he gets to kind of show off, but it's not really showing off at the same time. Like that always kind of pulled me into people's playing, is when they're doing something that to me is like so impressive, but is actually like not that impressive to a lot of people, but there's something about it that just feels and looks good. And that always just like resonated with me. So that I got into Tool a little bit later, but I've never been like super crazy into Tool, but I've really like appreciated their stuff a lot more as I got older. And especially once I like got into A Perfect Circle a bit more too. But
so I have a question about something that you may kind of resonate, that we could probably relate to. The cast recording of The King and I. What do you think about? No, I'm just kidding. Which I don't think I've ever listened to before, but anyway.
Never heard. When I was on my first tour, actually, the revival of that with Kelly O'Hara, I think, was like 2013 or 2014. I was on Nice Work If You Can Get It. It was like a non-equity tour of that. And it was one of those tours that was like, when you're on tour, there's always like these shows that kind of follow you, where you're following, because everything's out in like a season package at these theaters and whatnot. And I remember we were in Dallas for like 2 weeks to open, which was like, we shouldn't have been anywhere for 2 weeks on that tour because it was not selling well. And it was a huge theater too. So there was tons of open seats, but they had these big screens. They were showing like previews of what was coming throughout the season. And like the opening thing was The King and I. And so I knew like a 20-second snippet of The King and I. And that's like my only reference for that show, is like that 20-second thing. And then actually I saw the Miss Saigon revival in the West End. And I remember the people I were going with, they were like so excited to see it. And I was like, this is gonna be so boring. And I just kept thinking of The King and I. It's like, I don't want to see this shit. And I saw Saigon instead, which was like great. It was awesome. But that's like, I'm Asian, but in my head I was being racist because like these two shows were like kind of the same. I was like, I don't know which one is which, but I'm sure it'll be fine.
What was the thing that got you interested in playing drums in the first place?
Playing drums, I want to say it was a lot of like when I would watch TV with my mom, and we would watch things like if it was like in the morning or something, and it would be like the Today Show or any of those types, like talk shows or like variety based shows where they would have a musical guest. I would always just like be glued to whatever the drummer was doing. And it was just always draw my eyes to it. Just like seeing the person doing all these motions and like providing what I felt like was what I was hearing, which was like this groove, like whatever kind of made me like move around a little bit. I felt like I always clued in, was like, oh, it's this guy. Like this person is is making me feel this way right now? And like I would see people dancing, and again, it would just be like, oh, well, what's making them dance? It feels like the drummer is doing that. And she would watch a lot of like Johnny Carson sometimes. Like it would be kind of late for me at that age, but like I would see Ed Shaughnessy playing drums on there, and uh, I was just always drawn to that. And like we would watch the Grammys together or something, and like I would just be in love with that. Like to me, the Grammys is still like the coolest thing, because it's, even if you don't really care for all the artists or whatever, it's still like it's a night where it's just all music on stage, and it's just bands of all kind of genres. So I feel like it was a lot of just watching TV and being really into that. And like whenever I'd see a drummer on TV, I would just be so like mesmerized by it. And then I want to say another like memory of what might have got me into it was I'm not like close with my father. Like he's not been in my life since I was like maybe 4 or something. But I feel like I have a memory of sitting in a playpen and like with some headphones on and watching him play a drum set that he might have just bought, or like like he wasn't a musician, but I think like maybe it was like a hobby thing. And I feel like that is like a real memory, but it's so long ago. Like I don't know if it was real or if it was just something I like come back to that I envisioned, or maybe it was a dream or something, but I feel like it was something along those lines. And so I kind of just put 2 and 2 together and was like, maybe I should play drums whenever it was time to do like band in college, or not in college, like elementary school. It was like 4th or 5th grade. I think it was 5th grade. I think 4th grade, you weren't allowed to, there was not a percussion section. You had to do a different instrument, and then you could sign up for percussion in 5th grade. I don't know what the reasoning was, if it was like you were too young and they didn't want people just hitting things all day, or if it was just like they didn't have enough equipment at some of the smaller elementary schools in my school district. And then once you moved up to 5th grade, there was more gear or something like that. I don't really know what the reasoning was, but yeah, once I was able to, that's what I did. I remember in 4th grade, I tried to sign up for it, and they're like, no, you can't, you can do a different instrument. So I tried to sign up for French horn, and they didn't have enough French horns left either, because my mom didn't go to the meeting for prospective band students, so she didn't sign up in time. And so they're like, well, why don't you just wait till next year? And at the end of this year, we do the auditions for the following year, and you can audition. And it was just kind of like the band director playing on like a pad, like playing some like little patterns, and she would just ask to mimic it. And it would probably be like quarter notes or eighth notes. And then, play a flam, or here's a paradiddle, try that and see what happens. And then, yeah, they just kind of placed me. So I could have been a French horn player, which would have been a lot more with that. But, I could have been playing all those pause on the French horn.
For the king and I, there you go. Yeah. And you have your hand stuck in that thing. Such an odd instrument. I don't really know very much about it. I should probably ask a French horn player more. Yeah, I'd rather talk to drummers.
Yeah, I agree.
Did you play in junior high school? Did you start playing in bands, or was it more just?
So it was kind of like my mom at first, once like 5th grade hit, she got me, we did one of those, like we could rent, it was like a snare drum and a stand and like a practice pad. And I had that for like 6 months, and she was like, we're going to get rid of the snare drum. You're going to use the practice pad, because I don't think she wanted to hear the snare drum at that age. But so, yeah, I had the practice pad, and then I played through like 4th and 5th grade. I wanted to play like in the jazz band that they had, which it was like in 6th grade, you could do this like after school jazz band, or it was like before school or something. And I think I did that. I don't remember, but I started doing like bands as I got into like 7th, 8th grade. There was a kid that I moved to like the neighboring town, same school district and everything, but a kid that lived down the street from me, his mom had bought him a drum set and a guitar. So he would like play some guitar, and I would play drum set. And we had another friend that lived, a couple streets away, who would come over, and try to play a little guitar and sing, and we would try to come up with songs that were not very good, but we were like really into them, and we would, you know, try to learn covers and everything. And our middle school in 7th and 8th grade did this thing that was just called like Guitar Day, where it was kind of like, I think the band directors got together and were like, we should do a presentation of like the history of rock and roll and the guitar as like an assembly. So they do that, and they would have, you know, bands play. And then as it got bigger, the next year it was like, hey, we're going to ask if like 3 bands want to audition, like student bands. So we auditioned. At that point, we'd grown to like 6 members, which was way too many people for a student band, but it was cool. And we played, and I think it went okay. We've like famously, someone forgot the lyrics to Blitzkrieg Bop by the Ramones. And we tried to do an original that we, again, like in our heads, we're like, man, we're killing it up here. And it probably made 0 sense and did not sound good to the audience. But yeah, did a lot of that. And then I played in more bands like in college. Probably like, I felt like in high school, I was never in a lot of like rock bands. It was like I was always just doing like I wanted to be, but it was more just like doing concert band, marching band, jazz band, wind ensemble. I was doing a youth symphony in Youngstown for a few years. And then in college, when we had a little more freedom, there was a couple kids that I went to school with who I'm still friends with today. One of them's a great guitar player that I feel like we played in like 5 bands together throughout that time. And then when we both separated for grad school, and then we came back to the area, played in some bands together. And we kind of were in our first kind of club date band together too, like a wedding band type of thing, or like a horn rock band. We played some like, I don't know, sports bars and random spots that would have like a Hard Rock Cafe in Pittsburgh. We played there a few times. And yeah, that was like later in life, but that was kind of more the band phase that I was in, was once I got a little older. Just because I didn't even have a drum set in high school until like, I want to say 11th grade or so.
Okay.
So it took a while.
What made you decide to go to Slippery Rock University?
Slippery Rock. So that was like a local school. It was like probably 30 minutes north of where I grew up, in Zillionople, Harmony, Pennsylvania, which is like 45 minutes north of Pittsburgh. Just a little small town, kind of like Stranger Things. If you've seen that show, it's kind of like the town from Stranger Things, but with less alien activity going on. But so Slippery Rock was just like one of the local universities that had a lot of kind of pull around that area, just because it was, you know, it was there, it was closer. And they had a lot of great professors there that would do a lot with the local high schools. So I'd already known of the, you know, like they had a great jazz ensemble there led by Dr. Steve Hawk, who has done a little bit of touring since he's retired, which is pretty cool. And then he just always had a great group going on there. So like he would bring that jazz ensemble to like local high schools, or like when a high school would do like an honors band or district band kind of thing, they would perform. And they would do this camp every summer, which was like a full creative arts camp. So there was like creative writing that you could sign up for, or like I would sign up for the jazz camp and do that for like 2 weeks in the summer. I did that one summer, I think, going into my senior year. And I'd also started taking lessons with the percussion professor there, David Glover. He kind of moved to town and started getting that job. And I remember one of the kids that was a year ahead of me in high school had been taking lessons with him. And he was like the first guy I ever saw that played like 4-mallet marimba. He had a Constantinople, which was like, that to me, it was like, wow, this is the best ride cymbal I've ever heard. Like, this is awesome. This is so cool. And he was also just like, he was like that guy that suddenly like could do everything. And I was like, shit, I want to sound like this guy. Like, I looked up to him and another kid that was, I think a year older than him in high school. And like me and this other kid, Dave Eisenreich, who's actually, I got to play with him on Mean Girls. He was playing percussion down in Naples, which was like really cool. It was like a weird full circle moment. But he was like, yeah, I take lessons with this guy, David Glover. He's like the guy at Slippery Rock, and he lives, at that time he was living in Slippery Rock, and then he moved to Cranberry Township, which was even closer to me. That's still part of my high school district. He still lives there to this day. And so I just kind of hit him up and was like, oh, I want to kind of go further into the percussion thing and learn more about mallet percussion. And I want to play drum set like this guy Dave does. Like, he sounds awesome. And yeah, so I just kind of started talking to him. He gave me some lessons, and then it kind of got me ready for my going into senior year, and got me ready for auditioning at Slippery Rock and then at Youngstown, and auditioned at some other school. I want to say Akron, maybe, in Ohio. But yeah, he always treated me really well. And he kind of knew that I also I wasn't coming from a lot of money, and it was a significant bump from the guy I had been taking lessons with, and a little bit further of a drive. So to kind of convince my mom, he was like, hey, your kid's pretty good. Like, I would love to, give him some lessons. I can offer, I don't remember if he like just kind of waived the fee for a little while or whatnot, but he was very instrumental in being like, your kid sounds good. He should be doing these things. I want to help him out. And that kind of helped me also want to go to Slippery Rock. So I was like, this guy's great. He's been huge for me. And I want to play in that jazz ensemble. I want to learn from David Glover on the drums, because he great drum set player, but also teaches percussion really well. And I want to get more into that and go somewhere where I can do a little bit of both. Because I love playing percussion too, in school. So I wanted to kind of keep doing that. And that just was like, it's closer, it's a little cheaper than going out of state to Ohio too. So kind of just helped make that decision for me. And I got to do all those things, which was great. And I'm happy I had that experience for sure.
Do you have your bachelor's in percussion performance from there?
Yeah, percussion performance. I went there to do performance, and then kind of got convinced that I should add like education. And then after like a year, I was like, it's not for me. Like, I'd always been taught like really good teachers in music should be really good teachers. And you don't want to like have someone who's half-assing that. Because there's a lot of people that'll be like, oh yeah, I'll do education as like a fallback. And that's what people would tell me. It was like, well, you should have it. You can always play, or you can always be a teacher, but still play, but you can't always be a performer and then get to teach, at least like, a full-time paid position necessarily, without the ed degree, which is obviously not true in terms of like, you could teach private lessons, you could do other forms of teaching, but I was kind of like, I don't want it to be a fallback career, because if I treat it as a fallback career, I'm probably going to half-ass that. And then if I'm going into something else with the idea of like, oh, this will be my fallback, then I won't be as committed to it as I could be. So yeah. And when I had talked to my professors about it, they were all supportive of it. And they were like, yeah, you seem like you know what you want to do. It's obviously going to be a little more difficult in certain aspects, and you're going to have to work a little harder here or do this a little differently, but they gave me full support and we're cool about it. So yeah, I did bachelor's there.
Did you envision yourself doing what you're doing now, or did you see yourself playing for Tool or somebody like that? What was your main goal down the road?
I don't know. It was kind of a little bit of both. Like, I had done high school musicals when I was in high school, and that is kind of what like helped me get into it and be like, oh, this is fun. Like, I enjoy doing this. This is a good use of all my skills. I think even at a younger age, it was like, oh, I can read music, and I can also play this ballad in Seussical and make it sound like a Celine Dion power ballad. Like, that excited me. I thought that was really cool. But I still like I said, I would want to, if I had that chance to play in like a big rock band, I would take it. But it was kind of like, okay, well, I'm looking at this path, and it's very much like, if I want to do that, the best way to do it is to continue on with my study of the instrument and getting better at it. Like, I'm not going to get better at it if I don't take this, or which isn't true. Obviously, like, you can do whatever and practice the instrument and get better at it and learn music and whatnot. But for me, it just made more sense to go down that route. but I knew that it was something related to that just because of the way I had been getting gigs when I was in college and the way that I don't know, I guess just the way that I approached music. I wasn't ever, I knew even when I was in grad school, I went to grad school for jazz, and I was like, I don't think I'm going to be a jazz musician necessarily, but it's a part of my playing that I feel like is good enough that I should work on it to the best of my ability. Then when I go off into the real world, I can still apply that in different ways too. And it just helps, only increases my musicianship in different ways. And, it just kind of helps develop the vocabulary and my understanding of music and everything.
So you got your master's degree in jazz studies from Florida State.
Yeah, Florida State down in Tallahassee.
And why'd you choose Florida instead of going someplace in Pennsylvania?
I wanted to get out of the state. I had been, I went from high school to college to a university that was kind of considered like 13th grade for a lot of people where I grew up. That like Penn State for anyone in Pennsylvania is kind of like 13th grade. But Slippery Rock for like locally was kind of like, oh yeah, this is a school that a lot of people will go to that's really close by. So I just always maintained, or I had always remained in like Western Pennsylvania, which I love to this day. I still love getting to go back, and it can be beautiful. But I was like, I want to get out. Like I'd always felt this thing that was like, I want to go to like another place, like another city, and get this experience of traveling. And my professor, David Glover, he was always very much like, yeah, like he went to Florida State, and he also went to North Florida and then UT Austin. So he was kind of like, a lot of people in this area tend to not go to a lot of other places. And it's really important, even if you were to come back here, it's important to go out, see other places, live somewhere else for even a year or two and see what that's like, see how you change while you're living there, how you evolve and everything. So he encouraged a lot of his students, like a lot of them went to grad school in like very different places, which I thought was really cool. And to see people go down to like Atlanta, South Carolina, Texas, Florida. He's really good about like giving people those resources to kind of figure out where they could go next. And because that was a school he went to and spoke highly of, that was like kind of one of the ones on the list. And I went down there and visited, did like my audition there, and heard a lot of the players there, and was like, man, these guys all sound great. And like as far as jazz goes, they were all like playing circles around me too. Like the underclassmen were like playing circles around me. So I was like, I need this. To be honest, it wasn't my first choice out of, I think I did there, UT Austin, and then University of Miami. And I think those other ones, because they were more like cities that had a little bit more going on. Tallahassee is not, I mean, it's the capital of Florida, but there's not like a ton going on there as far as like a metropolis goes. So I wanted to go to these other places for that reason, but Florida State offered the assistantship. So it's like, well, I got to go that way. So still owe money to them, but
Well, you got out of that area where you were born and raised, and you wound up doing a lot of traveling after grad school. What was the first thing you did? Was it a musical or was it a cruise ship?
Cruise ship. So after grad school, which was great, I learned a lot there. Moved back I think I was going to move to Atlanta, and then I was like going through a breakup and was like, no, I'm just going to go back home for a little bit. And I got back to Pittsburgh and was working for like maybe a year and a half, doing like just some local high school musicals, horn band stuff, club dates, random one-off gigs here and there, and was just kind of like, all right, I need to, get out and play music daily if I can. And I had some friends that had done cruise ships, and one of them was like leaving the band that he was in. It was like a party band. And then I also had the sax professor from Slippery Rock. I had done a few gigs with him, and he was like, if you want to do this, like, I know people, because he had gone to Miami, and he was like, I know people down in that area that, work for a lot of cruise ships and help find musicians for some of the ships that'll port out of there. So he gave me some names, and it was like as soon as I made the effort to like reach out to someone, then I got, you know, a call or an email from someone else that was like, hey, I got your name from so and so. We have this party band. Your friend Matt is leaving. I would love for you to come in and join this band. It seems like you have the experience and you know a lot of different tunes already. And I have a contract that goes out in like 2 months. So you have enough time to like get your passport, get your physical done, and get ready to roll. And then we go to Alaska for 3 months. And so it kind of just happened quick. And then I was working at like a record store. It's like a record video game store, kind of like GameStop, but if GameStop also sold records and CDs and all kinds of stuff. So I like put in my notice there, and then like kind of took some of my stuff out of the apartment I was in and got a subletter in there, and then went out onto my first cruise ship, and that was like 2014, I think, early 2014 or spring of 2014.
So where'd you go between? It was at Alaska and some other place. Like, how did that work?
It was just Alaska for those 3 months. So like the summer, all these ships kind of have like certain seasons for itineraries. So like Alaska is always like May through September, because that's just like the warmest time to be in Alaska. So I joined the ship in LA, and then we went up the coast we did San Francisco, but for like a day, and then Astoria, where they shot the Goonies in Oregon, and then Victoria, BC, which is a really cool little town, and then Vancouver. And then for the rest of the summer, it was just Vancouver up to Whittier, Alaska, which you would like fly to Anchorage, or people would fly to Anchorage, and then you take like a bus or a train into Whittier, Alaska. Real small port town. There's like one building that everyone lives in, and like one bar that was open till like 4 or 5 in the morning. So the ship would like get there, dock at like midnight, and then all the crew would get off and go to this one bar called like the Anchor Inn and just hang out there until like 4 in the morning, until they had to get back on the ship, basically. And that was like one of the ports. So like people would either do like Vancouver up to Whittier, and then they would get bussed out to Anchorage to go fly home, or they would, do vice versa. But I just did that all summer. So it was just, it was Vancouver, Ketchikan, Skagway, and Juneau, and then Whittier, Alaska. So we just did the same ports for 3 months straight.
What is a typical day like on a cruise ship as a performer?
Wake up whenever you want, and you play a set at like 8:00, a set at 9:30, and a set at 10:30. Or maybe you'll do, if it's a disembarking day where it's leaving a port, you might play a deck set. So you'll play out near the pool for like an hour at like 4:00 when the ship is leaving and everyone's gotten back on the ship. And then you'll play later that night, and maybe it's like disco night. So you'll play at like 8:00 is like a disco set, and all the cruise staff are there, and you kind of dress up. I had like white pants and like a super low cut, like V-neck or like a button down, and you're playing like all disco tunes or all 70s and soul tunes. And then you play like usually one more set at night. So usually doing around 2 to 3 sets, but like during the day, you're kind of free to do whatever you want as a musician. You don't really have any other obligations. There was a few contracts where I would do some secondary work. Like I worked in the art gallery, and I would do auctions where I was just there to kind of like take tabs when they would do an auction with, if someone like made a bid on something, which was like not very often, but I would like keep a tab, like, okay, this person bid this much or this much. And then I would help them set up all the art, like pull it out of their storage facility. We would set it up throughout the day, or, for like a morning, like an hour or something. And that would pay like $10, $15 cash, like an hour or something. So it was just like extra work that you could do just to pass the time. I got into going to the gym on one of my ships, which was cool. Like probably the best shape I was in was 2016. I was in like, I think it was in Southeast Asia, doing like Thailand, Singapore, Japan, and would like was going to the gym a lot to pass time during the afternoon. So it's a lot of downtime, and even worse so than when you're on tour where you can at least like go out and explore a city. The downtime on a ship can be like you're stuck at sea, and a sea day is like you're probably doing more stuff during that. You might have a set in the middle of the day because it's a sea day, and that's how they've kind of organized it to fill up time. But yeah, it was usually that. If you're in the show band, it was a little different. It would be like maybe a 5 o'clock sound check and rehearsal with a guest entertainer that was on for like one show that week. You would literally go through their whole show within like 45 minutes. And then you'd play a show at 7 and a show at 9. And then in between then you go up and you get dinner. And that's really it. You know, you just play and then you hit the bar afterwards if you want and just kind of hang out.
So you don't have to pay for your housing.
No. So this is a great way to like get work right out of college. You go onto these ships, everything's provided for you. You know, like you have a cabin, you do have a roommate most of the time, and they're small, but if you're okay with that, your food is all covered. And as a musician, you usually get access to like the nicer like passenger buffets. And then there's also the crew mess too, where, you know, they'll also have some good food. You get a little more international food that way because, you know, so many people from so many countries working on these ships, that you can, you know, try a bunch of different things. And then, yeah, but yeah, it's all covered, you know, and it was nice. It was nice to be able to travel. Like it got a little boring being in the same ports in Alaska for a whole summer, but it was also like, when else am I going to go to Alaska for free and get to explore some of these small towns and do some hiking, go kayaking on a lake in the middle of a mountain in Alaska? Like, got to do stuff like that for free, you know, sign up for the excursions on the ships. And if they have room and there's no passengers signed up for certain ones, then they'll put you on there and you can go do the excursions and stuff for free too, which is great. You know, passengers are paying hundreds of dollars to do that stuff. So if you take advantage of it, you can see some cool things for sure.
All right. Question.
Yeah.
About how much do they pay?
Oh, I was up to, when I left, I think it was around $3,000 a month. But you know, I didn't have any expenses. I had suspended my cell phone bill while I was on the ship. You know, you would make calls on the ship through like you could buy phone cards that worked on the ship, and internet. You buy by the megabyte or by the minutes. It was like different depending on the year, and keep in touch that way. But yeah, I suspended my phone bill, so I was paying really nothing. I had rent for an apartment for like 2 of those 3 months the first time I did it, but it was cheap. It was like 2014 Pittsburgh rent, so I was paying like under $400 a month or something, which was great.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
But even that, I was a little late paying that rent sometimes, but mostly because I was across the country. But yeah, by the time I left the ship, or on my last ship, I was around like $3,000 a month. When I first started, it was less than that. I think when I joined in the party band, it was like $2,750, and so it kind of kept going up. And then my last ship that I was on, or maybe it was the second to last one, I was doing more of the show band stuff, and that would normally start a little bit lower because with the party band, you're coming in as like a specialized entertainer. With show band, you're just one person that gets rotated in and out of like a group of 7 musicians, you know? So I kind of was like, hey, I'm going to do the show band. And I had a contract lined up, and they were like, hey, do you think you could switch and go to this other one actually instead? Which was kind of throwing off my plans for that season or something. Ended up being totally fine. But I was like, yeah, could you toss me a little extra to kind of make up for the difference here and whatnot? Or could you keep me at my party band rate? Because I know the show band would normally start a little bit lower. And they were like, yeah, all right. Like, you've worked for the company before. We trust you. Like, so that was nice. They kind of threw me a bone on that one so that I didn't take a pay cut switching positions, which was cool. But yeah, I would say it was around that. And it was nice because like it was a good way to pay off some bills coming out of college and grad school. I had some credit card debt from like a root canal I had to get when I got back from grad school. So paid for that. That was a great feeling. The first time, you make that first like big credit card payment was great. Or like when you get to zero on that card, that was awesome. But yeah, it was a cool time. I always tell people that if you're coming out of school and you're not sure what you want to do, you're not like hardcore about like, I want to only audition for symphonies, or I want to just play jazz or this or that. It's like, if you don't know what to do, those ships are great experiences. I wouldn't do them now at my age and like having already done them, but like, I think they're great. And there was definitely times where I was like, oh, this sucks, I don't want to do this. But like looking back on it, it was such an easy experience. And it's such a unique experience too, that like, it's hard to share it with other people that haven't done it. When you meet, like, I know some people in our industry that have done cruise ships, and I feel like there's a different bond when you get to talk about like, oh man, you were on this ship, this guy, and you went to this weird crew bar in this one weird port town, like it's just different. It's a different vibe sometimes. So I'm glad I did it. It was a definitely good experience. And it got me a lot of playing and reading chops too, I think, which was really nice.
What got you into playing musicals and doing tours? And what was the first tour that you did?
First tour I did was Nice Work If You Can Get It. A kind of swing show, like all Gershwin music, which was a great time. That was kind of closer to when I had gotten out of grad school. So I still had a lot more of that knowledge because it was a lot of like 20s sounding traditional jazz. It was No Ride Cymbal was like riding on the splash cymbal, that kind of stuff, which was great. But getting into it was, I think when I was in like maybe 9th or 10th grade, one of the guys, like one of the seniors that was in the percussion section or in marching band or whatever, he was playing the show. I forget what show they were doing at my high school, but I remember the girl I had a crush on or something wanted me to go to the High School Musical with her. And I remember like, oh, this guy's playing drum set. Like, that's cool. And then the next year it was one of the other guys I looked up to was playing it. So I was just like, oh man, all these great drummers at my school that I looked up to and really enjoyed their playing or enjoyed them as people and their kind of trajectory as musicians. I was like, oh, they're all doing this. So like, I should try to do this when I get the chance. And so that's kind of how it happened. My first one was Joseph. I think I played the percussion book for Joseph when I was in 11th grade. And my friend Eric Statzer, I think was his name, he was playing drum set. And so we then swapped the next year because I was like, oh, like I'll do it, but I'd love to play drum set next year. So we were like, yeah, cool. Like we'll do a swap, which I'm glad because senior year was Seussical. And that was the first one I got to play drum set for. And I loved it. Like I just had a great time. Like I said, there was like moments where I could play like a little Latin jazz number and learn how to play a mambo. And then there was times where it was like, play more like a power ballad, which I would listen to a lot with my mom because we would drive home from my grandma's and she would listen to like Delilah After Dark, which is like power ballad after power ballad. And so I just kind of always had a soft spot for doing that kind of stuff too. And yeah, just kind of got into it through that. And then when I got to college, it was kind of the same thing. It wasn't so much, I played like one of the musicals at Slippery Rock, but they only did one like a full musical like every 2 years or something. But then I got hired to play like a local high school, like another high school's musical, which was kind of cool because I was like, oh, I didn't know I could get hired to do this because my high school had never hired people. It was always just the kids in school played in the band for the musicals. So once I learned I could get paid to do it, and then I started getting more calls for that, I was like, oh, this is easy to me. Like at that time, there's harder elements to it as you're a professional, but like at that time it was like pretty low stakes. You're playing at a high school. They weren't expecting me to bring in, I would look at the list and be like, oh, I don't have half this gear, but I have a drum set. And they'd be like, yeah, that's fine. And I would just make do and play. And it was cool. And I'd have a good time. And usually it was like other friends in college who were like hired to play trumpet or guitar. And so we would like carpool together, and it was just kind of like a fun hang, I thought. So kind of just got into it through that. And then, yeah, I'd known I'd always wanted to like tour at some point, just because I remember seeing a tour of the Lion King when I was in college with a buddy of mine and being like, man, that's great. Like that seems like a fun time. And they get to tour. Like that's cool. They're just traveling to all these great theaters and getting to play. And so it always been like kind of on my list of things to do. So I was kind of lucky when I got to do it.
And what was the thing that you got to do on tour? What was the first tour of a show that you did?
That was Nice Work. Nice Work if you can get it.
Okay.
I got that. It was kind of weird. I got that through I'm always hesitant to say this because I don't want to give people the wrong impression like it's going to happen for them, but I got it through that Facebook group, the musical theater drummer and percussion group, which I've since now like kind of forgotten about because I'm not really on Facebook as much anymore. But like someone, I think Jeff Snyder, who was like a longtime road guy from New Jersey, he had posted on there. This is when I was on my first cruise ship. He had posted that he was helping someone find a drummer for a potential tour. And the tour had music that sounded like 20s jazz and was Gershwin based and all this kind of stuff. And someone like just sent me that link and was like, hey man, I've heard of this Jeff guy. He plays a lot of tours. You should hit him up. And I was on the ship. So again, like limited Wi-Fi access and whatnot. Got to a port and like hit him up, emailed him, sent him kind of like a haphazardly put together resume. And he was like, this sounds cool, man. Like, do you have any clips of you playing? I really didn't. So I took some video of me on the ship, sent that in. And he was like, cool, man, you sound great. Like, I'll send this to the guy who's contracting for it. He's like, it's a non-equity show. It's not a long contract, but, you know, see how you like it. So I sent it, or he sent my stuff to this guy, Jim, who was contracting at the time for Worklight Productions. And he was like, yeah, here's the details of it. Here's like the first 3 numbers of the show. Can you make a video of this within like, you know, a week or two? And I was like, yeah, I'm on a ship, but I'll talk to the staff and see if I can like get into one of the drum sets at night or something when everyone's far away from that theater. And they let me do it. And girl I was seeing at the time, like kind of helped me record a little bit. And yeah, I just kind of spliced it together and sent it in, just not really expecting much, but got the call to do it. And it worked out great because the band that I was in, the guy that was leading that, who had asked us to commit for like a whole year, not a year on one ship, but like a year of being available for that band. He had gotten offered some other gig in Dallas to do like a full-time band leader kind of thing. And so he was disbanding this group. So we were like, oh shit, we're now all of a sudden we're out of work after this 3-month contract. So luckily I had applied to this thing and ended up getting the gig. And yeah, it was great. That was my first tour. And it was short. It was like a 6-month total thing. It was like kind of 3 months in the fall. And then we had off for like Thanksgiving and Christmas, which was great. And then we met up again like the end of January and did like 3 months in the spring. And yeah, it was cool. It was a lot. It was a lot of like one-nighters and split weeks. All that kind of thing. It was bus and truck for sure. But it was cool. And that was my first taste of touring. And I loved it. I thought it was great.
So after that tour, did you look for other touring opportunities or were you looking to do other things?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely wanted to do another tour right after that. I just didn't know how. Like getting on that tour wasn't necessarily like, because it was such a smaller scale thing and it wasn't like we had a lot of big people working on it that could like pass my name along. You know, it was kind of like, okay, cool, I did this. I met some good people and it's nice to like kind of put it on the resume, but I was like, I don't really know what else to do now. So like, I was like, I guess I'll just like send out some feelers to I learned like the other companies like Networks and Troika. And obviously with Worklight, I had, you know, emailed with the people in the office to be like, hey, please consider me for anything else if you have something. And I guess they just didn't really have much. They were doing like, they still had Mamma Mia at the time, which I ended up doing a few years later. And they had maybe like 1 or 2 other things, but they were kind of a little lighter on the upcoming season. So I didn't really have any plans. I like came back home, did a little traveling that summer. I taught at a drumline nearby, taught at some like different whole bunch of different local drum lines in Western PA, different times that I've been home. And then pretty much right when I got off of that tour, that party band, the guy that was leading it, the job that he had in Dallas didn't work out. So he was like putting the band back together and had gotten like a last minute, hey, can you put a band together for 6 weeks? So I was able to do that to like, you know, fill in some time. So I went back out onto a ship. And then when I was on that ship, a girl that I was seeing was like, hey, I got offered a couple more contracts. She was doing like in the show, like dancing in the cast and stuff. And so she had got offered like a multi-contract kind of thing. So I was like, okay, well then I'll just do that. And like, we'll figure out so that I can be on those ships at those times. And so we did that briefly, or as long as we could really. And then when I was on, I think it was the last one I was on, is when I got asked to submit a video for Rent. And then I didn't get Rent because I couldn't be there for the live in-person band kind of mashup audition that they did. But they were like, we can offer you Mamma Mia because that drummer is going to be leaving. So if you want that, you could do that. It's going to be the last year of it's like the farewell tour of this non-equity Mamma Mia tour. So I was like, all right, cool. Like I didn't have anything lined up. I had went back home to help take care of my mom for a little bit, and then just kind of worked out timing wise. So yeah, that summer after my first my first tour, I was kind of like, I don't really know where to go. I don't know what to do next. So I just kind of sat around and not waited. I was waiting partially because the band leader of that cruise ship band was like, hey, I might have something else coming up if you can just like stay still for like 3 or 4 weeks. And then it nothing came through. So I reached out to the band manager of Princess Cruises, who was on my first tour. So that's where that connection did actually kind of help out. The big player on that first tour I was on, he had worked with Princess Cruises for a long time too, and ended up getting the job shoreside for managing the entire fleet for music. So that was awesome because I was able to just hit him up and be like, hey man, this party band's not working out. I don't really have much work. I'd love to do the show band. Girl I'm seeing is on this ship and this ship and this ship for the next like year and a half. Can you get me on any one of those? And he was like, yeah, we could get you on this one at this time. We can't do this one yet. We could do this one. And so we kind of came up with a little itinerary for me to do a few more ships. And yeah, I was able to do that. And they were great. The one of them was like where I met some really good people, and it was like the flagship at the time. It was like their newest ship in like 2016 or something. So it was like all the best guest entertainers were on that ship. So I was learning a lot of great music for that one. And the shows were pretty fun to play too, actually. And a lot of variety on those ships, like show wise. So that was nice. It was a good breakup too, because I'd done the nice work, which is like all swing the whole time. It was a lot of great brush stuff on that show too, which I loved. And then going back to ships where then I was playing like a Motown show and a show that had like a James Bond and Adele medley, and then had like all rock show where you're playing like Life is a Highway, and then Lionel Richie, and then the Commodores, and then Meatloaf. You know what I mean? It was like just such a mixture of everything, which is what I feel like listening to all the different music I've listened to like really came in handy and has been really nice. So
Life is a Highway has one of the better drum fill intros of all time.
Great. Yeah. Just a good groove. Like, yeah, I hadn't really like listened to that song like extensively, but then when I had to for that show, I was like, oh, this is great. Like I could listen to this anytime. And one of my favorite songs to this day is still The Night Shift by the Commodores.
Mm-hmm.
That's like later era Commodores, like Vinny is playing drums on there. And I was playing it for like some guest entertainer, this guy from Montreal who just had that in his show. And I remember playing it just being like, this song is so cool. Like the groove is cool. The vibe of it is cool. And so that's a lot of people who know me know that's like one of my favorite songs. I used to work at this vineyard in Brooklyn. And in the evening when it was like nighttime and we had all these lights and everything, that was always my like, it's now 8 o'clock. It's the night shift at the rooftop. Just set the mood, you know? And Vinny sounds great on it too. So
you did the Prom, the musical as well on tour, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. I did Prom. That was like obviously not coming right out of COVID because we were still dealing with a lot of COVID stuff during that. But yeah, that was like that fall of 2021 when tours were starting to reassemble and go back out. And that one had been one that had been put on the back burner because of 2020. It was supposed to go out, I think originally in like the winter of 2020 initially, or sorry, like, yeah, early winter of 2020, like January or February or something like that. So they obviously just kind of just pushed that back. And then I got to go on it like from the get-go, which was cool. But yeah, that was a really fun one to play. There's a lot of good styles in there, and it was a workout for sure.
For people that are listening to this or watching this and they want to do the things that you've done recently, what would you recommend that they do?
To like get into it, or to like kind of be adaptable on the tours?
To get work as a touring drummer for a musical.
I think, I mean, it's not that different from, what you would do to be getting any gigs in, whether it's in town or on the road. It's having a good working knowledge of a lot of different styles and feels, and being adaptable to just a little bit more of like an inconsistent lifestyle. And you reach out to some people and you just let them know like, hey, I'm available to tour. I want to tour. Because a lot of people don't, which I think is kind of interesting. I get it at a certain age or at a certain point in your life, but I think letting people know that you're interested in it is like the first step, because I think a lot of contractors or music directors who are looking at, filling up their roster for a band for a tour, sometimes just avoid asking certain people because they're like, oh, they seem like they don't really want to leave their area and they're kind of set doing their thing. So they don't even ask people sometimes because they just assume. So I think, letting the right people know that you're available to tour, maybe like reaching out to, if someone is on a chair and you hear that show is going out, you could always reach out and ask them, if they know anything about it, or if if they're willing to let you come in and watch and maybe talk to them about doing the tour. And I think that sometimes might look better than being like, hey man, do you need a sub? I'm here if you need a sub. It's a little less so than being like, hey, I would love to play the show. If you know what's going on with the tour, I'm available for that and would love to do that. I think it's a little easier for some people to hear. I don't know for sure. I haven't had a chair where I could do that necessarily, but I know some younger guys right now who are looking to do that and that are currently subbing on certain things. And they're like, oh, I would love to take this on the road and actually have it full time. So I think just letting the right people know that you're willing to do that. And like some of these companies like Networks, Worklight, Troika, Big League Production. One of them just changed their name to Crossroads, I think. I forget which one. But reaching out to those people, you can just go to their general website, and they don't always have like a contractor because it's non-equity. So for some of the stuff they do. So if you're okay going out on a non-equity show, which I don't think is that big of a deal, depending on where you're at in life. If you're willing to do that and you just purely want to get touring experience, reach out to them and just send them something that shows them what you do, like a resume or like some YouTube links, or if you have an Instagram that has you playing on it, maybe try to find a way to send those, like put them in a little highlight reel playlist link or whatever, and send that and just say, hey, I'm looking to tour. I'm not concerned about if it's a union tour or a non-union tour. Here's what I play. Here's how I sound. And, I'm willing to do this. I'm willing to go out on the road. And just make it known that you're willing to do that, I think is the biggest thing. Otherwise, it's kind of like the same way you get anything, it's being good at being in rehearsal. Are you going to be there for 3 weeks of rehearsals and be annoying, or are you going to listen to the choreographer and listen to the music director, and stay out of the way, and then be there ready on a minute's notice when it's been like nothing for an hour, and then suddenly you hear 5, 6, 7, 8, and you just have to like start playing. It's a lot of that sometimes. So just being adaptable to that, and yeah, I think that's kind of the biggest thing. It's hard to say because so many tours pick up people in so many different ways. I gotten asked to do like one of the Glenn Miller tours when I was on a different show, and it just didn't pay very well. So it's kind of like, I don't know how you got my name. I appreciate it, but yeah, I'll have to pass on this one for now. But yeah, you just kind of never know. But reaching out to people who have toured before, I think is good, because I know me and a handful of other guys who just currently got off the road, we're all kind of like a little done with it. So I'm more than happy if someone's like, hey man, I would love to tour this thing. Do you know these people? Like, I try to, help people get whatever names they can, depending on who's, if people are like, don't give my name out, then I won't do that. But yeah, I think that's a roundabout way of saying like how to tour. But yeah, it's difficult because it's just, sometimes you just never know. Like, I've known some people who were on a tour and they're like, I had no intention on doing this. Someone just got my name and asked me if I wanted to do it, so I did. But yeah.
You said you're in your mid-30s now, early 30s?
Yeah, I just turned 35 in August.
35. You've been through life a little bit. You've had some experiences. For myself, I tend to look at other people's mistakes and like, you know what, I'm not going to do that. Yeah. And look at people's successes and say, you know what, that's the path I want to go down. Now, you've made mistakes in your life. When it comes to the mistakes you've made playing shows or just being a professional musician in general, you were to tell someone, you know what, you probably shouldn't do this. What's that one thing that you tell people? Try to avoid this.
Man, I think it's probably a mixture of like, there's obviously like the playing things, like don't try to play too many things in the wrong moments, so there's moments in shows where you can open up a little bit, and then moments where you definitely shouldn't. So not that I don't think I've like had a bad experience of doing that where I shouldn't, but it's like some stuff like that, like just playing style appropriate things. I've definitely been in a spot where me and a friend of mine on a show, we kind of were like told like, you guys are having a little too much fun with this thing in this one song, and it's not supposed to sound like that at all. But for us, we thought we were like, oh man, this is cool, this is a good time, we're really grooving on this thing here. It was just definitely not stylistically appropriate at that time, and as cool and as hip as we thought we were, it wasn't it, and it's knowing having that humility to be like, it's okay for me to play exactly what's on the ink and just make that feel good, instead of assuming that what I'm going to do is better than what's in the ink or what the show needs at that moment, and then another thing I think would be just to like, be careful who you're shit talking with and around, and know that people talk, and like, people talk in a way that is like, everyone's going to talk. And at some point, someone's going to say something negative about you, and you have to be okay with that. But also be careful who you're talking to and when and how you're doing it. Because you just never know if you're going to say something to a local musician who is like really good friends with another local that knows that you're coming to town on a different show, then people might come into the show with a different experience with you already in their head, and that's, you don't want to come into that. And you just want everyone to come in with it. Like, if they don't know you, you'd rather it just be that at first, and not have this idea of like, oh, I heard so-and-so is on this tour and yikes, can't wait till he's out of here. You know what I mean? Like, I've seen some of that happen with certain people where I've been somewhere or I've been on a tour and someone immediately is like, oh, great, we're going to this town. They have got this trombone player that's just awful. And you just immediately, it's like, it's that kind of vibe. So I don't know. It's that. It's just like, be careful about how you're talking with in interacting with people on the show, especially people that are doing other things. Like my big thing is like always treat your crew really well, your audio department and your props department, especially as a drummer on tour, because they can make or break your experience sometimes, because they're going to make you sound good or sound bad. They can make sure that your trunks with your gear are set up near where you need to set up when you get in there to load in, or they can put them halfway across the auditorium and you've got to like figure out how to carry stuff through a bunch of stands and then drop it over the barrier into the pit, or get it down, or not, like, don't ever assume that I've seen it before where people have been like, oh man, it's such a long day. I had rehearsal at 10 and then we have a show tonight. And it's like, yeah, well, the props guy's been here all day loading in heavy equipment. And then he also has to take care of like the keyboard player's like stool, you know what I mean? Like they're doing so much that just, you never want to like do anything that's going to rub them the wrong way, or have a bad feeling about you as a musician coming in at the last minute and just like sitting down and playing. Because, what we do, I feel like, is what all of us do on tour, is like it's a privilege, and like it's great to do it, and we've all earned our way there. But you just want to make sure that you're like aware of what other people have had to do just in that day alone to get there. You know what I mean?
People that want to come to New York, they're like, man, this is where it's at. There's, the jazz headquarters of the world, supposedly. There's musical theater here. Of course, there's musical theater all over the United States, but, Broadway is here. Of course, I can go to the West End, but I'm not trying to go to London. But Broadway is here. I want to move to New York. What should I know about living in the city that people probably don't know and that they should know?
I feel like it's that you don't need all the gear that you think you need sometimes. Like, I feel like when I was younger, I would be so thrown off if I didn't have like my cymbal, if I didn't have like my full drum set, and set up exactly the way that I wanted it to be. I think it's when you come to New York, you have to be able to like shed what that feels like and like get rid of that, and just be able to go into any backline situation in any room and just be able to adjust on the fly and just deal with it, and know that no one cares. It's like, I think that's the biggest part about it, is that sometimes you go in, you're like, oh man, I hope it sounded okay. Like the snare is a little weird and blah, blah, blah. Like no one cares, man. Like no one in the audience is like, oh man, I hope they got the right snare drum today. Or I hope the wires are okay. And that little hole in the bottom head, I hope that's not throwing them off. It's like, they don't care. And I mean that in like a good way and a bad way. It's like, they're not going to care if you make a mistake because of that. They're going to let you go for that. They're not going to hold it over your head, but also they're not going to care if you try to use it as an excuse. They're just going to be like, okay, guy was in here at the 7:00 show and sounded just fine. You know what I mean? Like, so I think it's that. And I've had a lot of talks with other drummers here that have been like, oh man, I love going to this room and playing on those drums because they sound that way in that room for a reason. And they've been through a million tunings, and everyone's kind of found about, up and down which way they can go with a drum at like 54 below or at green room 42. And you just kind of know what's going to work in there, and how to just quickly adapt and be like, oh, this thing's ringing too much. I'm going to throw a little bandana on there, or I'm going to throw my wallet on here, and we're going to make it work. And no matter what. So I think it's just that. It's just know that no one really cares about those little things that might get in your head and throw you off when you sit down on the drums in New York City. And living wise, it's like, just, know which bodega has the best bacon, egg, and cheese near you. I think that's a big thing to know, that not everyone knows. Know the difference. I think know the difference between like a bagel at a good bagel shop versus a bagel at just like a generic bodega, because that's just going to be like a bag of bagels. Mm-hmm. You gotta know where you can get that good bagel.
No, it all comes back to food, because we started out with Primanti's.
True. very
And
true.
Katz's Deli. And now we're talking deli, the best delis and the best bagels. And that's important because New York City does have, as much as I am kind of burned out from living here, they
Yeah.
do have the best bagels in the world. I'm sorry. New York,
Yeah.
you can't beat it because of the water, from what I understand. Same thing with the pizza. As
Mhm.
much as I love Chicago pizza, there's something about a New York slice. It's just, I don't know.
Yeah. It's the convenience factor, like I love a deep dish pizza too, but to me, I treat them differently. It's like, I love going in somewhere, grabbing a slice and walking out with it. And that was the whole thing with Permanis. Permanis was made for like truck drivers and people like driving the boats, like the barges through the rivers there, to just be able to come in, get a whole meal in one and just eat it. That's why it was like the fries and the coleslaw are all on there. So it's convenience. It's not the most convenient sandwich because it's huge, but
Yeah.
no, it's the convenience of the full meal in one. I guess a good thing to know is to like have those things that help you do that quickly. Like I always have like a couple bandanas in my cymbal bag. I've got the little like snare weights that you can just like clip onto under the rim of like a snare drum or a tom, and then you can flip them up and down, and just a little piece of leather essentially that just kind of, it's better than a moon gel, I think, just because it's not sticky and you can reuse them. They're not going to like get bad over time. Like little things like that. Even I used to take like a tea towel or like a little washcloth, and there was one place now I play at Bar 9 a little bit, and they have a cymbal stand that does not have a felt or a sleeve on it. So usually I'll just play whatever the cymbal's there because I don't want to ruin my own cymbals. But when I've experienced that before, I'll take this little washcloth and like essentially just drape it over the stem of the cymbal and then put the cymbal on that, because then it's got the washcloth, and that also helps it stay up because there's not always like the felt underneath or anything. So it's kind of dual purpose, and sometimes it sounds kind of cool and it doesn't like change anything, especially if it's just like for a crash cymbal, it's still going to sound like a crash cymbal, and it at least keeps it from keyholing and all that stuff. But just those little things I feel like are really good and like helpful. Another tip too, Steve Piccotaggio, great drummer up here in Washington Heights. I always say like anything that I've learned about being a mobile drummer, he has taught me. And it's like, you get the bongo bag and you get lightweight hardware. That's a big thing. I think having the like single braced or flat braced lightweight hardware from any of these companies now makes it, like Tama, DW, Ludwig, Yamaha makes it, but they're like that thick kind of like weird. They're really light, but they take up more room. But the other brands, you can take them apart and put them all into a bongo bag. So I can fit like 2 cymbal stands, snare drum stand, floor tom legs, the base of like a cheap throne, hi-hat, fit it all into this like protection racket bongo bag or like tuxedo bag, bongo bag. Pop that on top of my bass drum, which will have like the seat, like the actual seat for the throne will be in there kind of like against the head. Or, sometimes I'll just, if I'm doing a gig and I'm just doing kick and snare, I'll just take the front head off my bass drum, put the snare drum in there with like a towel around it, and then the throne in there. So it's just literally like, it looks like one drum and then bongo bag on top of it, and all strapped to like one kind of heavy duty, cart. So you can have it all on one cart. So props to Steve Piccotaggio for teaching me that. But I think a lot of jazz drummers do that too when they're doing those kind of restaurant gigs. And sometimes all you need is a ride cymbal and a snare drum, and you can do the gig like that. But learning how to be like not needing a lot, I think learning how to be as minimal as possible and figuring out how to do a 3-hour gig with just ride cymbal and snare drum is going to really help you out. And then when you do get a full drum set, I feel like it opens up things in a totally different way. You get to think about it a lot differently and approach it differently too than just hitting it just because it's there, which also is okay to do sometimes too. But,
Where can people find you on social media?
I'm on Instagram, d.stoltz23. And then I'm on Facebook. I don't really use it that much. I have a YouTube channel it's not like a YouTuber's channel. It's just random videos I've popped on there throughout the years. I've got like one video from the prom. I think I have one from Mean Girls on there. I'm not too sure. Some old Mamma Mia videos on there. Um, yeah, just like some random stuff on there, but nothing too crazy. And then, yeah, I'll be just like, I usually post if I'm playing anywhere on Instagram. I have some stuff coming up at Bar 9, some readings. I'll just be kind of in random places, but yeah, social media, it's usually Instagram's the one I'm on the most.
Well, it's very nice to get to know you and to meet you through this Zoom call. And I wish you the best of luck with everything. And maybe one day there will be a Primanti's in New York City, and we'll go hang and get some comfort food.
I hope so, man. It'll be a good time. I'll make sure you get the right one too.
Which one do you normally get? I'm curious.
I do the corned beef and cheese. A lot of people will do the Pittsburgher because it says it's the second best seller on the menu, but it's not my favorite. It's not the one. It's like, well, it's essentially like a cheeseburger, kind of like a chopped cheese. But
I was about to say like a chopped cheese.
Yeah,
Pittsburgh
the number one best seller on the menu is not a sandwich. That's how they get you. It's beer.
What is it? Really?
Yeah.
They have their own beer, or they just say beer?
It's like, usually like Icy Light or Yingling, like a Pennsylvania beer.
Okay.
I think they're starting a beer collab with North Country Brewing, which is from Slippy Rock, actually. So I grew up with them as like my brewery of choice. So I think they have done a collaboration where it's going to be like Primanti's beer, just like a red ale or something that will be at most of their locations. I don't know when, but I feel like it's coming pretty soon, if not already. So, yeah, but just
like to thank my sponsors, Primanti.
Primanti Brothers, Innovative Percussion.
Yes, yeah, you and I have a similar thing with Innovative. I like Innovative sticks. I use their Nashville stick.
Oh yeah, that was pretty good. I was using the LA session one for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And it was hard to get. They were like going out of stock with that one for a while. It started to get pretty popular. So now I'm on the 5AB, and then the Cool Ride when I'm doing like quieter gigs. I'll use the Cool Ride, just the little tiny tip, but same like diameter as like the LA session one. So it's kind of nice for those quiet gigs.
Cool, man. Anyway, I'm gonna let you go. Thank you very, very much for you taking time out. And
Lily, thanks for having me.
We will talk soon.
Sounds good.